Hello and welcome everybody to the Open Bar special holiday edition. It's Tuesday, December 23rd, 2 days from Christmas. Might have a white Christmas. Getting a little snow here in Connecticut today. More importantly, it sure looks like Santa Claus is coming to town right on time here. I think yesterday's action in the market was overwhelmingly bullish. Love to see a lot of the risk on areas, a lot of the most offensive groups kind of lead the way. A little give back today. Looks like we're setting up with some inside day action here. Probably constructive. So let's dive right in and talk about it. Hello, chat. Andrew, Kurt, Risky Business. How's everybody doing on this snowy Tuesday morning? Hello, Rachel, Robert, Cheryl. Is Straza putting on his Santa suit? Nope. Let's hit the charts. Okay, to the cockpit. Just checking out the tape here. About 45 minutes into the session. I don't know what utilities are doing up here, but basically what you see is, a lot of red. This is the give back I'm talking about. Industrials down marginally, energy down a bit, basic materials down a bit, healthcare about flat, consumer cyclicals down 0.5%. Technology down 0.5%. That's probably just fine. If you look at what's going on in big cap tech, the new highs list is really growing. Names like Micron, Lam Research, really being led by semiconductors. If we were to look up the XLK components, though, it's really just those two. I think you'll get more the coming days and into next week. I am looking for stocks like NVIDIA, Microsoft, even Broadcom, right? Failing this top right now, digging in at this big gap zone, right? I think there are going to be some tremendous opportunities starting right now in a lot of these big cap tech names. I expect, these stocks, the biggest, best companies in the world are really the usual suspects, right? When it comes to chasing any sort of year-end move, right? Why wouldn't they go buy the best stocks and the leaders of this cycle, especially considering, something like Broadcom, been one of the best stocks, down 20%, quickly, coming off of earnings just a couple weeks ago. Basically, a pretty swift correction. You could even call it a bear market, at the individual stock level. And the way to enter trades like this, you can get more aggressive and do, you could do different things, but just drop a VWAP from the pivot highs, right? And that's going to get you a good entry on something like Broadcom, right? If you want to make the bet that it's going to go back to those old highs, well, wait for buyers to get back in control, right? Anchor that VWAP from the pivot high right here and buy on strength above, whatever it is, 350, 352. And those setups are really all over the place. NVIDIA is one that I would say I'm maybe most interested in. If you drop a VWAP from the pivot highs in NVIDIA, we are setting up, excuse me, we're setting up beautifully here, right? So a couple points higher triggers us at about 186. That'll be a beautiful entry. Do you want to wait for that confirmation, right, and only buy on strength? Probably. I think you could jump some entries in different things, but look, we're right here. You have some really clean, trigger levels. So I would lean on the VWAPs. Another one is Palantir that's already triggered, right? We took this one for a whirl last week. Right, we were coiling up above the VWAP from the pivot highs. You had this nice little bull flag situation. You could draw in, right? And it's already popped higher. It's going. So I think you go across the board, the mega cap growth trade, and find opportunities like this, many of which have not triggered yet, and get some action that way. Here's AMD, another kind of failed top setup situation, right? So coming off of those lows, you could be super aggressive and buy right against support, I think, in this kind of market, or you can wait for the VWAP at the pivot highs. Or if you said, hey, I really want to jump this thing and 230 is a little bit too far away, well, drill in. Let's flip it to like a 15-minute chart. How would we do that? All right, so this is still AMD. Now on a 15-minute chart, let's just clean it up a little bit here. Okay. Could chop a VWAP from the highs of this little consolidation range right here, right? From second week of December, could drop some VWAPs right here that could help you get in, right? And we're just about there. And then just to see what we were looking at on the daily chart, that's where the secondary VWAP from the pivot highs will come in. But if you jump it at the VWAP from this little range high here, you have a trade to be made there, 7.5%, 8% of upside just to the next VWAP, right? So it can make a big difference if you can find a strategy to effectively jump entries like this. So AMD, one that I really like. Let's look at Microsoft. Put a trade on this just yesterday. This might be my single favorite setup in the Mag 7 mega cap growth complex. So let's draw it out and talk about why. Let's start with the VWAP from the April low. Look at that, right? So this coil that we've seen play out since late November here hasn't even triggered yet, but boy, are we close. I mean, a little ramp higher here in Microsoft, and this coil's breaking out. Now, it's happening within the context of a much larger topping formation, right? So you have a couple different levels, or really a confluence of interest here right around this, I don't know, 495 zone, okay? You also have the VWAP coming in, right? You got the neckline here, and you got the coil happening right at that breakdown level. Do I think Microsoft is going to complete this massive top in the middle of a bull market? Absolutely not. I do not. I do not think that at all. You drop a VWAP now here from the pivot highs, and it's going to show you, again, the importance of this 495 level. So a couple different ways you could do it. Okay, how do you enter something like Microsoft? Like I said, we're already in. We jumped this. I feel very comfortable with our entry from yesterday. If we drill into a little 15-minute chart, right, we can find a really clean level right here. You got several touches, right, in this 488 to 490-ish zone, right? So you could do so many different things. You can VWAP from the high of the little range, right? We could zoom out a little bit and VWAP from the high of the coil, okay? And you're going to be above all of those levels, right? You could do it from the little breakdown gap where the coil began, right? We're above, right? And now you got this little VWAP pinch situation right here on, the most tactical of time frames. And it's looking good, right? So something like Microsoft, if you did want to enter today, it could be as simple as just saying, all right, let's drop a VWAP from the high of day, or just use the high of day as an entry. So it would be triggering right around here. I think for a setup like this, for a situation like this, just use the high of day, right? So call it 487. If Microsoft's above 487, this is something I want to be long all day. Spencer, I'm going to flip it back to the chat. I want to see what everybody else wants to talk about. Happy to throw up some live charts in different groups. So chat, if there's something you want to see, let me know right now. Flipping it to the chat, Spencer. Okay. Hello, everybody. God, the snow is really pretty in the background, isn't it? Willie Stocks, what's up? Woohoo, what up? All right. Batman pattern on Microsoft. I don't know what that is, but I love Batman. Love a good Batman. Pizza rolls. Yeah, that was crazy. We had a situation here. You heard that? Skullhoff? We had a situation here on the back porch during the morning show. Meta, please. I got you. We'll do Meta. A-Lab. All right. We could do that. Yeah, my parents still have a landline. It's hilarious. It's good, though. It's good. I'll get the phone. We're doing the best we can. 7 rate cuts. Yeah. Bonds have not been good. Home builders, disappointing me. Then don't own them. Right? Home builders have a whole myriad of issues going on, and you probably just stay away. I'm big in the rocket, pretty much out of all the builders at this point. Small positions, smaller long-term positions, but I continue to hear very bad things about the home builders, and the price action is jiving with all of those bearish narratives, to be frank, right? Okay, so we'll do that. We'll do the COPEX. Yeah, we'll do Adobe. We'll do SoFi. That's it. QB I like. I don't even need to show you the chart. I'm sure you've read the notes we've been sending. We like QB a lot. QB looks fantastic. All right, I think I got a nice little list here. PL trades over. Pay yourself, Bill. Let's go back to the chart, Spencer. QB, real quick, it looks fantastic, right? Just zoom out on this. This is a major breakout, and it's the place you want to be. Banks have been so good, and I think there's going to be a catch-up bank here, or a catch-up trade here in the smaller banks or the regional banks. The big banks, the mega banks, the train has left the station. I think you can enter a JP Morgan here. That's probably the single most actionable name, but the time to enter it was really yesterday morning or even the day before, right, on this little pullback. You would have already wanted to be in JP Morgan. We would have sent the trade in JP Morgan yesterday, actually, but we try to be mindful of sending too many super high priced picks out, and we had already sent Microsoft. So moving on from the banks, Adobe. I bought more Salesforce yesterday. I really like the scoop and score situations in some of these software names, right? So Adobe, this was really the last line of defense, right? And we broke down, hung out for a couple of weeks, and then we rocketed higher, actually ahead of earnings. And a decent earnings reaction, nothing too special, but we're still kind of coiled up here. So for Adobe, the way I would really be looking at it is you got to VWAP it from this pattern high here, right? You have this little distribution pattern set up, right, with a nice clean and clear support level, a shake below, and then we jump higher. And now we're finding resistance exactly where we would expect to, right? That VWAP from the pivot high. And we tested it a couple times already, right? So we ran right back into it after earnings, and we've just been coiled up there in the time since. So that's really your entry. And this one is as clean as it gets. I like it. I think it could be categorized as cute. Obviously a big laggard in its space, but for me to think that software stocks don't participate better, and look, it's been a super bifurcated space. Can we find good software stocks? Sure, fine. In the super big cap space, most of them do not look good, is the truth, right? Microsoft, Salesforce, Adobe, ServiceNow. These stocks have been hit pretty good. You can still find software leaders when you go down the cap scale a little bit, but to think that a group like software, a critically important group to the growth trade, AI, all this stuff, doesn't participate far better than they have been, it's crazy to me. Right? Semiconductors have been so good. Come on, software, it's time to show up. Adobe, the top of my list in terms of preferred vehicles to invest in that software catch-up theme. And you couldn't have a better level here than called 360, right? 360 is that VWAP break, and it's also the breakout of this little coil. So Adobe above 360, I think you run it right back to those pattern highs. You get almost 20% move there. I think that's a nice trade. But this is also probably a really good entry from a longer term standpoint, right? So if you look at a weekly chart, we are getting that momentum crossover right here in the PPO. And then you have a nice little RSI, bullish RSI divergence. So I really like everything about Adobe. We'll do SoFi, and then we'll do Meta, and then we'll get you out of here. SoFi, I think you have a multiple time frame alignment situation here, right? Where I just love this, right? Clearly, we have a little breakout situation in the making, right? But for now, we're just digesting a lot of the gains, right? These gains off the April lows. SoFi is up 250%, right, off of those Q2 lows. So a lot of digestion just been going on here since, I don't know, early September, in this nice little coil. But what's happening here that makes this setup extra bullish is that we're getting that consolidation phase on top of this key polarity level, right? We stuck the breakout, right, in SoFi, and now we're digesting and consolidating above that breakout level at these prior cycle highs from 2021, right? So I really like to see that. Let's zoom in a little bit and figure out how we play this continuation pattern higher. I'm going to delete all these VWAPs because it's crazy town, right? But this is the right way to kind of look at it. I'm littering this little consolidation wave with VWAPs to try to figure out what that zone is, right? So let's just do it again together. Pretty clean neckline, right? Of a potential, I could draw this like a head and shoulders top, right, guys? Draw that like a nice head and shoulders top. And then really you just want to pinch it in, right? So take the pattern low, drop a VWAP right there, and take the pattern high, drop another VWAP. You're right there. So SoFi, I mean, I don't need to know anything more about this chart than, hey, we got a beautiful little tactical gap here, right? At about 20, call it 28, right? You got this little gap zone here. And that's also the upper bounds of this little range. And it's also a confluence of VWAP support and resistance, right? In this case, you got a little VWAP resistance there. So if I gap down on December 5th, right, gap down by 6%, and it's been any sort of rally attempt since has kind of been capped by these two VWAPs from the pattern high and pattern low, right? So once we start working through this zone here in the 27s, right, and we start looking at SoFi 28, you got to be long. And I think it doesn't just go back to the pivot highs, but that would be similar to the Adobe trade, about 17% of upside, right? But I think at that point, once we take out the VWAP and we're back above 28 in SoFi, you got to be looking for the next long-term target, right? And remember what this chart looks like when you do zoom out here. Okay, so I don't think that 28 gets you 32, right? The highs of this little consolidation. I think 28 is going to get you a lot more. You're probably going to the upper 30s and getting a nice continuation of what's already been a very powerful and steady uptrend. One more, and then we'll get you out of here. Meta almost looks like Microsoft. Let's drill in here. Not as clean, but similar situation, right? Where we have a nice top that clearly resolved lower. You got a downside move, right? You could have traded this on the short side here and made a nice little chunk, quick trade there. But now we're setting back up for a move higher, back in the direction of the underlying trend, which for Meta has been undeniably higher this entire cycle. And then we're just going to do this the same way, right? Let me clean up some of these VWAPs. Oops. So we got one from the pivot low. We got one from the April low. And we got one from the pivot high. And notice where they all come in. From 680 to 640, right? So that's really the zone to work through right here for Meta. And I don't think you are too comfortable, right, that we're starting to make that next move higher. That's going to bring you to 700 or 800s. And probably pretty quickly. I don't think you want to jump it until we're back in this little gap zone, right? So see all the VWAPs clustering here, but I think you want to wait for that confirmation above the upper bounds. And also, similar to SoFi and some others, right, you have this gap situation, right, where there's a big gap that can be filled right above 680, and it gets you all the way to pre-earnings level, which is about 750, 10% of upside. And then from there, you got the pivot highs, right? 16, 17%, just like Adobe, just like SoFi. But probably, similarly speaking, you get a much bigger leg higher that brings you into the 800s, 900s, who knows where we go. And this will probably end up being a really nice entry for longer time frames too. So setting up nicely in a lot of the tech trades. This is really my area of focus. When Santa Claus comes, he's probably going to hit the biggest and best stocks the hardest. That's what I'm expecting. I think we get it in the coming days and weeks and even into the new year. But other things, financials continue to look incredibly strong. Industrials, I think speculative growth is about to wake up in a really big way. So a lot of positive developments just across the board. I want to thank you all for joining me. And I want to thank you all for joining me all year. This has been just an incredible launch to such an awesome new show. This is really one of my favorite things to do each week, is come on the open bar and hang out with you guys. Spencer, going to flip it back to the chat. So thank you all for your support and viewership and for coming to hang out with me. I guess every Tuesday morning for the past couple of months. We're going to keep doing this show into the new year and beyond because we're just having a really good time doing it, coming out, talking about the tape, talking about the trades that we're seeing and putting on, and just going through it and covering the charts that you guys want to talk about. Shopify's all right. Hut looks great. Obviously some news there, sending the stock higher. We probably picked the wrong vehicle for the data center stuff. We're in Wolf. Wish we were in the Hut, right? So a lot of times got the right idea, wrong vehicle. That happens all the time. It'll happen again. Will the Amazon break out this century? It's a good question, Robert. So guys, thank you so much. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all of that good stuff. And we'll be back with you next week. Adios.